Hi guys, sorry to interrupt your viewing, but please subscribe to the channel and like this video. Thank you.
Imagine sharing your biggest, most exciting idea with someone you trust completely, only to have them steal it, call you jealous when you get upset, and then watch them fail spectacularly while you thrive. That's exactly what happened to me, and let me tell you, it was a roller coaster. It all started on a lazy Sunday afternoon. I was sitting at my kitchen table, surrounded by a notebook, scraps of paper, and my laptop, when the idea hit me like a bolt of lightning. For months, I'd been toying with ways to merge my love for sustainability with something marketable. I had dabbled in DIY projects, researched eco-friendly brands, and even tried making my own reusable wraps, but nothing seemed scalable. Then it came to me, customizable sustainable gift boxes. It was perfect. Customers could select from a curated menu of eco-friendly products, like handmade soaps, beeswax candles, plantable seed paper, and reusable utensils. And I'd package them beautifully in recyclable materials. Each box would feel personal and thoughtful, all while promoting sustainability. It wasn't just a product. It was an experience, a statement. I was so excited I could barely sit still. As soon as the idea fully formed, I thought of my sister, Emma. She had always been my go-to for brainstorming and advice. We've been close since we were kids, sharing everything from secrets to snacks. She'd even mentioned a few times recently that she wanted to start her own business, but didn't know what. I figured this idea could be a great way for us to work together. Later that evening, I called Emma and invited her over for coffee. I remember how excited I was as I laid everything out for her. My sketches of box designs, a list of potential product ideas, even a Pinterest board I'd started for inspiration. She seemed genuinely impressed, nodding along as I explained the details. "This is so cool," she said, flipping through my notebook. "I love how personal it feels. And it's all eco-friendly?" "Exactly," I said, beaming. "I've already found a few suppliers who specialize in sustainable materials, and I'm thinking of reaching out to some local artisans for the products. I really think this could work." She leaned back in her chair, looking thoughtful. "Have you thought about pricing? How much are you investing up front?" I paused, a little surprised at how quickly she'd pivoted to logistics, but I brushed it off. "I've started working on a budget, but I'm thinking I'll start small. Maybe just a few boxes at first to test the waters." Emma nodded again, this time more slowly. "Yeah, that makes sense. Do you have a name for it yet?" "Not yet," I admitted. "I wanted to figure out the structure first. I'm thinking something that evokes nature or sustainability, maybe something with green in the name." She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Well, let me know if you need help brainstorming," she said, her tone light. Looking back, I remember feeling a little uneasy in that moment, though I couldn't put my finger on why. At the time, I chalked it up to nerves about starting something new. After all, this was the first time I'd ever considered turning an idea into a real business. Over the next few weeks, I continued to refine my concept, researching everything from packaging options to target demographics. Emma checked in a few times, asking about my progress and offering vague encouragement. At one point, she even suggested a couple of product ideas, though they felt oddly out of sync with the eco-friendly theme I was going for. I didn't think much of it at the time. I figured she was just excited and wanted to help, even if her suggestions weren't quite on the mark. But in hindsight, I can see now that her interest wasn't as innocent as it seemed. One afternoon, about 3 weeks after our initial conversation, she came over unannounced. "Hey, I was thinking," she said, plopping down on my couch. "You should really jump on this idea soon. You don't want someone else to beat you to it." "I know," I said, a little exasperated. "I'm working on it, but these things take time. I want to make sure everything is perfect before I launch." Emma just shrugged. "Sometimes, done is better than perfect," she said with a laugh. It was an odd comment, and it stuck with me longer than it should have. But again, I brushed it off. She was just trying to be helpful, I told myself. She wouldn't do anything to hurt me. What I didn't realize was that, at that very moment, she was already putting her own plans into motion. It was a Monday afternoon when my phone buzzed with a text from my friend Sarah. I didn't think much of it at first. Sarah was always sending me memes or random updates from her day. But this text wasn't like her usual ones. "Hey," it read, "isn't this your idea?" Attached was a screenshot of an Instagram post. My heart skipped a beat as I opened it, and then it sank like a stone. There it was, an account for Earthy Elegance gift boxes. The bio read, "Curated sustainable gift boxes for every occasion. Thoughtful, eco-friendly, and made with love." The photos showed beautifully arranged gift boxes, and though the style wasn't exactly like what I'd envisioned, the concept was unmistakably mine. The part that made my stomach churn was the profile picture. It was my sister Emma's face, smiling brightly, as if this was her passion project she'd been dreaming of for years. I felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. I stared at the screen, rereading the bio and scanning through the posts. There were already several pictures of boxes she claimed were her signature designs, complete with hashtags like hashtag eco-friendly living and hashtag sustainable gifts. My mind was racing. How could she do this? How long had she been planning it? I dialed her number, my hands trembling with a mix of shock and anger. She picked up on the third ring, sounding cheerful. "Hey, what's up?" she said like nothing was wrong. "What's up?" I echoed, my voice shaking. "Emma, what the hell is this?" She hesitated for a moment before responding, her tone instantly defensive. "What are you talking about?" "Your Instagram account," I snapped. "Earthy elegance? The gift boxes? That's my idea. I told you about it weeks ago." There was a pause, and then she sighed. "Oh, come on," she said, her tone dismissive. "It's not the same thing. I mean, yeah, they're both gift boxes, but mine are totally different." "Different?" I said, my voice rising. "Emma, you copied everything. The eco-friendly theme, the curated products, even the way the boxes are styled. This isn't just similar. It's identical." She laughed, but it wasn't the warm, familiar laugh I was used to. It was cold, almost mocking. "You're overreacting," she said. "And besides, you never even started your business. You talked about it, sure, but you didn't do anything with it. You can't be mad if you didn't act on it." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Emma, I trusted you," I said, my voice breaking. "I shared my idea with you because I thought you'd support me, not steal it." Her response was like a slap in the face. "You're being ridiculous," she said flatly. "It's not stealing. Business ideas aren't some sacred thing you can claim. If you were serious about it, you would have started it already. Maybe you're just mad because I actually had the guts to follow through." I was stunned into silence. Every word she said felt like another twist of a knife. Finally, I managed to say, "This isn't about jealousy. It's about betrayal. You knew how much this meant to me, and you didn't even think twice about taking it." Instead of apologizing, she let out a sarcastic laugh. "Betrayal? Oh, give me a break. You're acting like I stole your life savings or something. It's just a business idea. You need to get over yourself." I hung up the phone, too angry and hurt to keep arguing. My hands were shaking as I stared at the screen, the Instagram page still open in front of me. I couldn't wrap my head around how someone I trusted so much could do something so cruel, and then have the audacity to act like I was the one in the wrong. That night, I barely slept. My mind kept replaying the conversation, her dismissive tone, the way she'd laughed at my pain. I couldn't decide if I was more furious or heartbroken. I thought about all the times I'd stood by her, all the secrets we'd shared, and how I'd always considered her my biggest cheerleader. Now, it felt like I didn't even know her. The next morning, I started seeing posts from mutual friends congratulating Emma on her brilliant new business. One person commented, "Such a creative idea. I've never seen anything like it." I wanted to scream. I considered commenting myself, exposing the truth, but something held me back. I didn't want to come off as petty or start a public feud. Instead, I vented to Sarah, who was just as outraged as I was. "She knows what she's doing," Sarah said firmly. "And honestly, it's a cheap move. People will see through it eventually." I wasn't so sure. Emma was charismatic and knew how to charm people. I felt like David going up against Goliath. Only this Goliath was my own sister. Over the next few days, I kept replaying everything in my head, trying to make sense of it all. Had I been too trusting? Too naive? Part of me wanted to confront her again, to demand an apology, but I knew it wouldn't make a difference. She didn't think she'd done anything wrong. Still, I couldn't just let this go. I had poured so much thought and passion into that idea. It wasn't fair for her to waltz in, take credit for it, and then call me jealous when I tried to defend myself. That's when I made a decision. If she was going to steal my idea, fine. But she wasn't going to steal my success. She had lit a fire in me, and I was determined to prove her wrong. After that phone call, things between Emma and me took a turn I never expected. The warm, sisterly bond we'd always had was replaced by this cold, awkward tension. She stopped calling and texting like she used to, and when she did reach out, it wasn't to catch up or check in. It was to brag. I just landed my first big order, she'd say casually, slipping it into conversation like it wasn't aimed at me. "It's from a local boutique, and they're planning to carry my boxes exclusively. Can you believe it?" I'd force a tight smile and nod, even though every word felt like a jab. It wasn't just the words, though. It was the way she said them, her tone dripping with smugness. And as much as I wanted to be the bigger person, it was hard not to feel bitter. This wasn't just some random business. This was my idea, the one I had poured weeks of research and excitement into. At first, I tried to distance myself from the whole situation. I avoided her Instagram account, muted her posts, and stayed away from conversations where her business might come up. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't escape it entirely. Friends and family kept bringing it up, not knowing the full story. "You must be so proud of Emma," my mom gushed one afternoon. "She's doing so well with her gift boxes. She said she's already had a bunch of orders." I bit my tongue, forcing a polite nod. "Yeah, it's great," I managed to say, even though the words felt like ash in my mouth. What stung the most wasn't just that she had stolen my idea, it was the way everyone seemed to be rallying around her like she was some entrepreneurial genius. Nobody knew the truth, and I didn't have the heart to tell them. What was I supposed to say? Actually, she took the idea from me? It would just make me look petty, and I didn't want to be that person. But as time went on, I started noticing cracks in her so-called success. For one thing, her execution was underwhelming. Her Instagram photos were poorly lit and hastily arranged, with mismatched props that made the boxes look more cluttered than curated. And the products? They weren't bad, but they weren't anything special either. It was clear she hadn't put much thought into sourcing them. Then there were the reviews, or lack thereof. While her posts boasted about selling out and overwhelming demand, the comment sections were oddly quiet. Occasionally, I'd spot a comment from a customer asking for an update on their order or complaining about a delayed shipment. I started digging a little deeper, keeping tabs on her website and social media. It didn't take long to notice a pattern. She was over-promising and under-delivering. Her descriptions claimed the boxes were luxuriously curated, but the photos told a different story. Her followers seemed interested at first, but the engagement was dwindling. It was strange to watch. On one hand, I hated seeing her struggle. It was hard to shake that protective instinct I'd always had as her older sister. But on the other hand, I couldn't ignore the flicker of satisfaction I felt. She had taken something that wasn't hers, and it was clear she wasn't equipped to handle it. Meanwhile, I started to feel a shift in myself. At first, I had been consumed by anger and hurt, but as I watched her stumble, a new feeling began to take root: determination. If Emma could take my idea and turn it into a mediocre business, then I could take that same idea and turn it into something exceptional. I knew the concept had potential. I just needed to do it right. So I started brainstorming again. This time, I was even more meticulous. I spent hours researching suppliers, looking for high-quality, eco-friendly products that would stand out. I sketched out packaging designs, tested different layouts, and even took a crash course in product photography. I wasn't rushing into it. I wanted every detail to be perfect, from the way the boxes were packed to the unboxing experience for the customer. I wanted people to feel like they were opening something special, something thoughtful. The decision to move forward wasn't just about proving Emma wrong. It was about reclaiming what was mine. For weeks, I had been stuck in this cycle of bitterness and resentment, and I realized the only way to break free was to focus on something productive. But there was one thing I promised myself. I wasn't going to let this turn into a rivalry. I didn't want to stoop to her level or make this about revenge. My goal wasn't to beat her. It was to build something I could be proud of, something that reflected my passion and values. Still, I couldn't deny the small, petty part of me that wanted to see her face when she realized I was back in the game. By the time I was ready to start putting my plan into action, I felt more confident than I had in weeks. I had a clear vision, a solid plan, and the drive to make it happen. Emma might have gotten a head start, but I was playing the long game. And if her sloppy execution was any indication, it wouldn't be long before the tables started to turn. This wasn't just about a business anymore. It was about proving to myself that I could rise above the betrayal and create something truly great. Deciding to move forward with my idea felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. After weeks of frustration and bitterness, I finally had something to channel my energy into. I knew if I was going to do this, I had to do it right. No cutting corners, no rushing. I wanted every detail to reflect the care and thought I had poured into it. I started with research. I spent hours combing through websites, reading reviews, and reaching out to suppliers. I didn't just want products that claimed to be eco-friendly. I wanted proof. I looked for certifications, sustainable sourcing methods, and businesses with values that aligned with mine. It wasn't easy. There were plenty of companies out there that slapped the word green on their labels without backing it up. But when I finally found the right suppliers, it felt like hitting the jackpot. Next came the packaging. I knew this was a make-or-break element for the business. Customers had to feel like they were unwrapping something truly special. I tested everything: recycled paper, compostable filler, natural twine, and plant-based adhesives. I even ordered samples from other eco-friendly brands to see what worked and what didn't. Every detail mattered, down to the font on the thank you cards. Once I had my materials, I started experimenting with product combinations. I wanted every box to tell a story. For instance, one box might have a calming lavender candle, an herbal tea blend, and a journal made from recycled paper, a relax and reflect theme. Another might include a reusable water bottle, stainless steel straws, and a compact tote bag for the eco-conscious traveler. I ran my ideas past a few close friends, who were immediately enthusiastic. "This is amazing," Sarah said, holding up a sample box I'd put together. "It's thoughtful, it's practical, and it's gorgeous. People are going to love this." Encouraged by their feedback, I started working on my branding. I wanted a name that was simple yet elegant, something that conveyed sustainability without sounding cliché. After brainstorming for days, I settled on Green Grace. It felt perfect, graceful, intentional, and undeniably eco-friendly. With a name in place, I designed a logo and built a website. It was my first time creating an online store, and it was a steep learning curve. I spent countless late nights tweaking the layout, testing the navigation, and making sure the checkout process was seamless. I wanted customers to feel confident and excited from the moment they landed on my site. The months of preparation were exhausting, but exhilarating. By the time I was ready to launch, I felt like I had poured every ounce of my soul into this project. The night before the website went live, I could barely sleep. I kept running through worst-case scenarios in my head. What if no one bought anything? What if people hated the boxes? What if Emma found a way to sabotage me? But the next morning, something amazing happened. As soon as I announced Green Grace on social media, the response was overwhelming. Within minutes, friends and family were sharing my post, leaving comments like, "This is incredible, and I can't wait to order." Strangers started following the account and messaging me with questions about the boxes. The first order came through less than an hour after the site went live. I remember staring at the notification in disbelief, then letting out a whoop of joy. By the end of the day, I had received over 20 orders, a number that far exceeded my expectations. I hadn't told Emma about the launch. Part of me wanted to keep it under wraps until I was sure it would succeed, and part of me just wanted to avoid the inevitable drama. But of course, she found out anyway. The day after my launch, I got a text from her that simply said, "Wow, really?" I debated whether to respond, but decided to keep it short. "Yes, really," I wrote back. "I told you this was my idea. Now I'm finally doing it." Her reply came quickly. "This is so petty. You couldn't just let me have it, could you?" I rolled my eyes so hard it hurt. "Emma, this was never yours to have. You copied me. I'm just taking back what's mine." There was a long pause before her next message. "Good luck. You'll need it." Her reaction didn't surprise me, but it did solidify something. I was doing the right thing. This wasn't about her anymore. It was about proving to myself that I could turn my dream into reality. Over the next few weeks, Green Grace grew faster than I had ever imagined. Customers were raving about the quality of the products and the attention to detail in the packaging. A local boutique reached out, asking if they could carry my boxes in their store. I started getting inquiries about custom orders for weddings and corporate events. Meanwhile, Emma's business seemed to be fading into the background. Her Instagram posts became less frequent, and when she did post, the engagement was noticeably lower. At first, I felt a twinge of guilt, but I reminded myself that this wasn't my fault. She had made her choices, and I had made mine. One day, I got a text from Sarah. "Have you seen Emma's latest post?" I clicked over to her account and saw a photo of one of her boxes with a caption that read, "Competition is healthy, but originality is priceless." It was a clear dig at me, and I couldn't help but laugh. If she wanted to play games, she could go right ahead. I was too busy building something real to waste my energy on her pettiness. By the end of the first month, Green Grace had become more than just a business. It was a source of pride, a reminder that I was capable of turning a painful betrayal into something beautiful. And the best part? I didn't need Emma's approval or validation to feel good about what I had accomplished. Her reaction might have been priceless, but the success of Green Grace? That was priceless too. The phone call came just 2 days after my official launch, right as I was packing an order for a customer who had left a sweet note about how excited she was to receive her box. The joy I felt evaporated the moment I saw Emma's name flashing on my phone screen. I debated letting it go to voicemail, but curiosity, or maybe morbid fascination, got the better of me. "Hello," I answered cautiously, bracing myself. "What the hell? Your name?" she snapped. No greeting, no pleasantries, just instant hostility. I sighed, already exhausted. "What's the problem, Emma?" "Oh, don't play dumb," she said, her voice dripping with accusation. "You know exactly what I'm talking about. You stole my business idea and turned it into a cheap knockoff. Do you have any idea how unoriginal that is?" I blinked, momentarily stunned by the sheer audacity. "Are you serious right now?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Emma, that's my idea, always has been. You're the one who stole it from me in the first place." She scoffed. "Wow, you're really delusional, aren't you? Just because you talked about it doesn't mean it was yours. I actually put in the work and made it happen." I laughed, a bitter sound I couldn't hold back. "Put in the work?" "Emma, your work was taking my idea, slapping together some boxes, and calling it a business. You didn't even bother to do it well. Meanwhile, I've been researching, sourcing, and planning for months. You can't accuse me of copying when you're the one who stole from me in the first place." Her voice rose, sharp with anger. "You're just jealous because I was successful before you even started. Admit it. You're trying to ride my coattails." That was it. I couldn't hold back anymore. "Successful?" I shot back. "Emma, you're barely scraping by. Your products are low quality, your branding is inconsistent, and your customers are complaining. Don't act like you're some entrepreneurial genius when we both know you're just trying to keep up." The conversation devolved into a shouting match, with neither of us willing to back down. She accused me of sabotaging her, and I reminded her again that I was simply taking back what was mine. It was exhausting, and by the time I hung up, I felt like I'd run a marathon. But if she thought she could intimidate me into giving up, she was dead wrong. Over the next few weeks, the rivalry between us escalated in ways that would have been funny if they weren't so frustrating. Emma started undercutting my prices, slashing her costs to the point where I knew she couldn't possibly be making a profit. But customers weren't biting. People could see the difference in quality between her boxes and mine, and they were willing to pay a little more for something they trusted. She also ramped up her social media presence, posting passive-aggressive captions and cryptic quotes about staying ahead of the competition. One post even featured a side-by-side comparison of her boxes and mine, with a caption that read, "When you know the original is always better." I couldn't believe the nerve. At first, I tried to ignore it. I didn't want to feed into the drama, and I figured the best way to win was to focus on my own business. But her antics started to wear on me. She began leaving fake reviews on my website, claiming my products were overpriced and poorly made. I knew they were fake because the usernames were suspiciously similar to one she had used in the past. I confronted her about it, but she just laughed it off. "Prove it," she said smugly. Meanwhile, I noticed that a few of my suppliers were suddenly unable to fulfill my orders, citing mysterious supply chain issues. When I pressed them, one admitted that someone had called pretending to be me, trying to poach my inventory. I didn't have to guess who it was. The more she tried to sabotage me, the more obvious it became that she was floundering. She didn't have the resources, the patience, or the strategy to compete with Green Grace, and it was showing. What baffled me the most was her refusal to admit she was wrong. I wasn't expecting an apology. She had made it clear she didn't think she'd done anything wrong, but I couldn't understand why she kept digging herself deeper. Every petty move she made only pushed people further away. Family and friends started to notice the tension. My mom, who had initially been oblivious to the drama, finally caught on after seeing one of Emma's posts. "What's going on between you two?" she asked me one afternoon. I hesitated, not wanting to drag our parents into it, but eventually, I told her the truth. To my surprise, she was livid. Not at me, but at Emma. "That's not how we raised you two," she said firmly. "I'm going to have a word with her." I begged her not to intervene. "It'll only make things worse," I said. "She'll just twist it around and make it seem like I'm turning everyone against her." Reluctantly, my mom agreed, but I could see the disappointment in her eyes. As the weeks went on, the gap between our businesses widened. Green Grace was thriving, orders were pouring in, and I was getting glowing reviews from customers who loved the quality and thoughtfulness of my boxes. I even started getting repeat customers and referrals, which felt like the ultimate validation. Emma, on the other hand, was floundering. Her social media engagement was dropping, and her website started looking more and more neglected. I heard through the grapevine that she was struggling to fulfill orders, with some customers waiting weeks for their boxes to arrive. One day, she called me again. I almost didn't pick up, but curiosity got the better of me. "What do you want, Emma?" I asked, my tone tired. She didn't waste time. "I think we should combine forces," she said, as if the past few months hadn't happened. "We could do so much more together than apart." I almost laughed. "Emma, we're not on the same level," I said bluntly. "You spent the past few months trying to tear me down, and now you want to team up?" "No, thanks." She bristled. You're so full of yourself. You think you're better than me, don't you? No, I said firmly. But I know I've worked harder, and I'm not going to let you drag me down. I hung up before she could respond, feeling a strange mix of sadness and relief. The rivalry wasn't over, but something had shifted. I could feel it. Emma's desperation was growing, and no matter how hard she tried to sabotage me, Green Grace was stronger than ever. And as much as it hurt to see my sister act this way, I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let her win. It didn't take long for Green Grace to hit its stride. Within a few months of launching, the business was thriving. Orders were coming in faster than I could package them, and the feedback from customers was overwhelmingly positive. People loved the attention to detail, the thoughtful combinations, and the eco-friendly ethos that was genuinely baked into every aspect of the brand. I was even getting inquiries from small boutiques and event planners who wanted to collaborate. But with every success, Emma's bitterness seemed to grow. It started subtly at first, vague posts on her Instagram that felt like they were directed at me. Quotes like, "Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, but originality is priceless," paired with photos of her own gift boxes. She never mentioned me directly, but the implication was clear. At first, I ignored it. I didn't want to get sucked into her drama. I had worked too hard to let her pettiness drag me down. But then the posts started getting bolder. She began hinting that she'd been the real innovator behind the eco-friendly gift box trend, even implying that others, meaning me, were stealing her ideas. One post in particular stuck with me. It was a picture of one of her boxes with the caption, "When your ideas inspire the competition, you know you're doing something right." The audacity of it made my blood boil. I wanted to respond so badly, to set the record straight, but I held back. I didn't want to feed into her narrative or give her the satisfaction of knowing she'd gotten under my skin. Then the messages started. I woke up one morning to find a message from a new customer. "Hey, just wanted to let you know I love your products." I originally tried Emma's business name, but the quality wasn't great, and the shipping took forever. So glad I found Green Grace. It's a game changer. I read it 3 times, unsure how to feel. On the one hand, it was validating to know that customers could see the difference between our businesses. On the other hand, it hurt to know that Emma's shortcuts and lack of effort were actively disappointing people. Over the next few weeks, I received a handful of similar messages. Customers who had tried Emma's boxes first were now switching to Green Grace, citing everything from late deliveries to subpar packaging. I didn't know what to do with this information. Part of me felt vindicated, but another part of me just felt sad. As much as I resented Emma for what she'd done, I didn't want her to fail. Not like this. I wanted her to own up to her mistakes, to admit that she had wronged me, and maybe even rebuild our relationship. But instead of taking responsibility, she doubled down. Her desperation became more obvious by the day. One afternoon, I received an email from one of my suppliers, letting me know they had been approached by someone claiming to represent Green Grace. The person had asked for exclusive rights to a product I used in my boxes, but something about the interaction didn't sit right with the supplier. They decided to reach out to confirm it was me. It wasn't. I immediately knew it was Emma. Who else would try to pull something like this? When I confronted her, she didn't even bother to deny it. "So what if I did?" she snapped. "It's business. You can't get mad just because someone else is being strategic." "Strategic?" I shot back, barely able to keep my voice steady. "Emma, that's not strategy, it's sabotage. You're trying to tear me down because you can't handle the fact that people prefer my business. That's not competition. It's pathetic." She glared at me, her face a mix of anger and something else, shame, maybe? But if she felt guilty, she didn't show it. "You're acting like you're so much better than me," she said. Newsflash. You wouldn't even have a business if it weren't for me. I laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "You're right," I said. "If it weren't for you, I might never have had the motivation to turn my idea into reality. So thanks for that." Her face hardened, and I knew the conversation was over. As frustrating as her antics were, they only fueled my determination to keep pushing forward. If she wanted to spend her energy on sabotage, that was her choice. I had better things to focus on, like growing my business and delivering an experience that customers loved. And it was working. Green Grace continued to gain momentum, with glowing reviews pouring in and word-of-mouth referrals driving sales. I even started getting invitations to speak at local events about sustainable entrepreneurship, which felt like a dream come true. Meanwhile, Emma's business was floundering. Her social media posts became less frequent, and the few comments she did get were often complaints from customers who hadn't received their orders. It was clear she was struggling, but instead of stepping back to reevaluate, she just kept lashing out. One day, I received another message from a customer. Hey, just a heads up, I think your sister is talking about you on Facebook, it read. I checked her page and found a post that was even more blatant than her Instagram digs. It's sad when people you love steal from you, she had written. But karma always catches up. The comments were a mix of sympathy and confusion, with some people asking for details and others defending her. I stayed out of it, knowing that engaging would only make things worse. But as I read through the thread, I realized something important. Her bitterness wasn't my problem. I had spent so much time feeling hurt and angry about what she'd done, but I didn't owe her anything. Not my energy, not my attention, and definitely not my success. She could keep posting her shady comments and trying to sabotage me, but at the end of the day, Green Grace was thriving because I had earned it. The realization was freeing. For the first time since this whole ordeal began, I felt a sense of peace. I couldn't control Emma's actions, but I could control how I responded. And from that moment on, I decided to focus on what mattered. Building a business I was proud of and letting my work speak for itself. Emma might have started this rivalry, but I wasn't going to let it define me. My success was mine and nothing she did could take that away. It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon when the call came. I remember it vividly because I had just finished a meeting with a local boutique owner who was interested in stocking my Green Grace boxes. Things were going so well that I was practically floating as I went about the rest of my day. Then my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen and saw Emma's name. My heart immediately sank. We hadn't spoken in weeks, maybe even months, and the last few interactions had been anything but pleasant. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity, or maybe hope, got the better of me. Hello, I said cautiously, holding my breath. Hey, Emma said, her tone surprisingly upbeat. Got a minute to talk? I hesitated, half expecting this to be some kind of setup. Sure, I said slowly. What's up? I've been thinking, she started, her voice taking on an almost rehearsed quality. Maybe we've been going about this the wrong way. The fighting, the competition, it's stupid. We're sisters. We should be supporting each other, not tearing each other down. For a moment, I didn't know how to respond. Was this her way of apologizing? Of admitting she'd been wrong? I mean, look at you, she continued, her voice dripping with forced enthusiasm. Your business is doing amazing. You've really built something special. I blinked, caught off guard. Thanks, I guess, I said cautiously. She barreled on, not letting me get a word in. And I was thinking, instead of competing, we should combine forces. Imagine how much we could accomplish together. We could merge our businesses, pool our resources, and really dominate the market. It's a win-win. It took me a second to process what she was saying. She wanted to team up? After everything she'd done, the lies, the sabotage, the smear campaign, she thought we could just join forces and pretend none of it had happened? I stayed quiet for a moment too long, and Emma filled the silence with what felt like her real motivation. Honestly, your success wouldn't have been possible without me, she said casually. I mean, I inspired you, right? If it weren't for me, you might never have even started Green Grace. That was it. Any hope I'd had that this was a genuine olive branch evaporated in an instant. Emma, I said, my voice calm but firm, I appreciate the offer, but I'm going to have to say no. Her tone immediately shifted. Why? She snapped. Why wouldn't you want to work together? It makes perfect sense. Because I don't trust you, I said simply. You've spent months trying to tear me down, and now that things aren't going well for you, you want me to bail you out? That's not how this works. I'm not asking for a bailout, she said defensively. I'm talking about a partnership. It would benefit both of us. I sighed. Emma, I've worked hard to build Green Grace from the ground up. I've put in the time, the effort, and the research to make it what it is today. I'm not going to jeopardize that by getting involved in something I don't believe in. I'm sorry, but my answer is no. Her response was immediate and cutting. Wow, so you really are as selfish as everyone says. I felt a pang of guilt, but I pushed it aside. I'm not being selfish, I said evenly. I'm protecting what I've built. If that makes me selfish in your eyes, then so be it. She hung up on me without another word. After the call, I sat in silence for a long time, replaying the conversation in my head. Part of me felt guilty. Emma was my sister, after all, and I hated the idea of our relationship being so fractured. But the other part of me knew I'd made the right decision. Trust is the foundation of any partnership, and Emma had shattered that foundation long ago. I couldn't risk everything I'd worked for on the slim chance that she'd suddenly change her ways. For the next few months, we didn't speak at all. Family gatherings were awkward, to say the least. She avoided me, and I avoided her, and everyone else tiptoed around the elephant in the room. I heard through the grapevine that her business was struggling even more. Orders were few and far between, and she'd started cutting corners even more drastically, which only drove customers away. It was hard to watch, not because I wanted her to succeed, but because I hated what it meant for our relationship. Still, I stayed focused on my own work. Green Grace continued to grow, with new opportunities and collaborations popping up almost weekly. I was working harder than ever, but it didn't feel like work. It felt like purpose. Every now and then, I'd think about Emma and wonder if things could have been different. If she had apologized instead of doubling down, if she had owned up to her mistakes, maybe we could have found a way forward. But as it stood, the damage was too deep. I missed the way things used to be between us. The late-night talks, the inside jokes, the sense of having each other's backs no matter what. But I also knew that rebuilding trust wasn't something that could be rushed or forced. It would take time if it ever happened at all. In the end, the call from Emma marked a turning point, not just in our relationship, but in how I saw myself. For so long, I had been stuck in this cycle of resentment and self-doubt, letting her actions define me. But that conversation made me realize something important. I didn't need her validation. Green Grace was mine, born from my passion, my hard work, and my vision. And no matter what Emma said or did, nothing could take that away from me. It started with a phone call from my mom. I could hear the thinly veiled tension in her voice before she even got to the point. "We need to talk," she said, her tone teetering between gentle concern and that subtle guilt-tripping only moms can master. I already knew what it was about. Emma must have gone to her, spinning some version of events that painted me as the villain. I braced myself. "What's going on with you and your sister?" she asked. "She's really upset. She says you're refusing to work with her." I sighed, gripping the phone a little tighter. "Mom, it's not that simple." "Well, then explain it to me," she pressed. "Because from where I'm standing, it seems like you're both being stubborn. You're family. You should be supporting each other, not fighting." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my frustration in check. "Mom, she stole my business idea. She lied about it, tried to sabotage me, and then had the nerve to act like she was the victim. This isn't just a little disagreement. It's about trust, and she broke it." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "I understand that you're hurt," she said finally. "But don't you think it's time to move on? She's your sister, and she's struggling. Maybe this is your chance to make things right." "Make things right?" I repeated, incredulous. "How is this on me to fix? She's the one who caused all of this in the first place." Mom sighed, her voice heavy with disappointment. "I'm not saying what she did was okay. But family comes first. Your name, you have to find a way to forgive her. You can't hold on to this forever." I felt a mix of anger and sadness bubbling up inside me. She didn't get it. None of them did. To them, this was just another round of sibling rivalry, the kind of petty squabble we'd laugh about at Thanksgiving years down the line. But to me, it was so much bigger than that. Over the next few weeks, the family pressure ramped up. My dad, who usually stayed out of these kinds of conflicts, decided to weigh in. "You know, Emma's not perfect," he said one evening, his tone diplomatic. "But neither are you. Maybe you should meet her halfway." What does halfway even look like in this situation? I asked, exasperated. Am I supposed to forget everything she's done and just pretend it never happened? He shrugged, clearly uncomfortable. "I'm just saying, holding grudges doesn't do anyone any good. It wasn't just my parents either. My aunt called me out of the blue, saying she'd heard about the falling out and that it was a shame we couldn't put our differences aside. Even my cousin, who I rarely talked to, sent me a message suggesting I'd be the bigger person. It felt like I was being backed into a corner. No one seemed to care about the details or the hurt I was carrying. To them, it was simple. We were sisters, and that meant I should forgive her, no questions asked. The pressure started to get to me. There were moments I found myself questioning everything. Was I being too stubborn? Was I letting my pride get in the way of reconciliation? One night I sat down and made a list. On one side, I wrote down everything Emma had done. Stealing my idea, lying about it, trying to sabotage my business, refusing to take responsibility. On the other side, I wrote down what I'd done in response. I hadn't retaliated. I hadn't gone out of my way to hurt her. All I'd done was focus on my own business and set boundaries to protect myself. Looking at the list, I realized something important. I wasn't the bad guy in this story. Setting boundaries wasn't selfish. It was necessary. Forgiveness didn't mean ignoring the damage she'd caused, and it certainly didn't mean letting her back into my life without accountability. The next time my mom brought it up, I stood my ground. "Mom, I love Emma, but that doesn't mean I can trust her right now," I said. "This isn't about holding a grudge. It's about protecting myself and everything I've worked for." She didn't seem convinced. "But don't you miss her?" she asked softly. I hesitated. Of course I do, I admitted. I miss the way things used to be. But the person she is now, I don't know if I can let that back into my life. My mom looked at me with a mixture of sadness and resignation. I just want my girls to get along, she said quietly. I know, I said, my voice breaking a little. But this isn't something that can be fixed overnight. It's going to take time. Over time, the family's insistence began to fade, though the awkwardness lingered. Family gatherings were tense, with Emma and me carefully avoiding each other. She seemed content to play the victim, casting herself as the sister who had been unfairly shut out. I overheard her once, telling a cousin that I'd let success go to my head. It hurt, but I didn't let it show. I reminded myself that I didn't need her approval, or anyone else's, to validate my choices. What they didn't see, what no one seemed to understand, was that this wasn't just about the business. It was about trust, and trust couldn't be rebuilt with a simple apology or a forced reconciliation. In the quiet moments, when the guilt and doubt started creeping in, I would remind myself why I'd started Green Grace in the first place. I'd poured my heart and soul into this business, not out of spite, but because it was something I truly believed in. And every order, every glowing review, every kind word from a customer was proof that I was on the right path. I didn't know what the future held for my relationship with Emma. Maybe we'd find our way back to each other someday, or maybe we wouldn't. But for now, I knew one thing for certain. I had to protect what I had built, no matter what anyone else thought. Family might come first, but sometimes you have to put yourself first too. A year can change a lot. When I look back at where I started, scribbling ideas in a notebook and dreaming about creating something meaningful, I can hardly believe how far Green Grace has come. What once felt like a risky leap of faith has blossomed into a thriving business. The growth wasn't easy, but it was steady and rewarding. The product line expanded as I refined my vision and listened to customer feedback. What started as a handful of customizable gift boxes grew into an entire collection. Boxes for weddings, corporate events, baby showers, and even seasonal themes like holiday care packages. Each box was a reflection of the care and thoughtfulness I'd poured into it, and my customers noticed. One of the most exciting milestones came when I partnered with a local boutique. The owner had reached out to me after hearing about Green Grace through word of mouth. Your boxes are exactly what my customers are looking for, she said during our first meeting. They're personal, unique, and eco-friendly. Everything that's in demand right now. Seeing my boxes displayed in her store felt surreal. I remember walking in one day and watching a customer pick up one of the packages with a smile on her face. It was the kind of validation that reminded me why I started this journey in the first place. As Green Grace grew, so did the opportunities. Wholesale orders started rolling in from small businesses that wanted custom gift boxes for their clients. I even landed a deal with a local tech company to create employee appreciation boxes. It was a massive order, far bigger than anything I'd done before, and it pushed me to streamline my processes and hire part-time help. At first, I worried about losing the personal touch that had made my business special, but I quickly realized that scaling up didn't have to mean compromising my values. I trained my team carefully, ensuring they understood the attention to detail that Green Grace was known for. The result? A seamless operation that allowed me to focus on what I loved most, creating and connecting with customers. Meanwhile, Emma's business was unraveling. I hadn't heard from her directly since our last conversation, but word traveled fast in our small circle. Friends and family started mentioning that she had quietly shut down her business a few months after our falling out. At first, I didn't know how to feel. Part of me wanted to feel vindicated, to relish the fact that her underhanded tactics hadn't worked out. But mostly, I just felt relieved. Her business had been a constant source of tension, and now that it was gone, it felt like a weight had been lifted. Still, I couldn't ignore the twinge of sadness that came with the news. Emma and I had grown up sharing everything. Our toys, our secrets, our dreams. To see how far we'd drifted apart was painful, even if I knew it was necessary. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Emma was bitter about how things had turned out. One friend told me, "She thinks you got lucky, that your success was just a matter of timing." Another mentioned that Emma had made a few snide comments about Green Grace, claiming it was overhyped. At first, the remarks stung, but then I reminded myself that bitterness often comes from a place of insecurity. Emma wasn't angry at me. She was angry at herself for how things had played out. Despite everything, I didn't feel the need to retaliate or gloat. I had learned the hard way that holding on to resentment only weighs you down, and I wasn't about to let her negativity drag me back into that place. Instead, I focused on the lessons I'd learned over the past year. The biggest one? Not everyone you trust has your back. It was a painful truth, but one I'd come to accept. Emma's betrayal had taught me to be more cautious about who I confided in and to set boundaries when necessary. But it had also taught me something else, how strong I could be when I put my mind to it. There were so many moments when I could have given up, when the stress felt overwhelming or the family drama got too intense. But I didn't. I kept pushing forward, and every small victory along the way had made it worth it. Now, as I look around at what Green Grace has become, I feel an immense sense of pride. Not just in the business itself, but in the journey that brought me here. One evening, as I was packing an order for a customer who had written a heartfelt note about how much they loved my boxes, I realized something. I didn't regret anything. Not Emma's betrayal, not the rivalry, not the countless sleepless nights spent building this business from scratch. Every challenge, every setback had shaped me into the person I was today. Stronger, wiser, and more confident in my ability to stand on my own. I don't know if Emma and I will ever reconcile. Maybe someday we'll find a way back to each other, or maybe we won't. Either way, I know I'll be okay. Because if this past year has taught me anything, it's that I'm capable of more than I ever imagined. And that's a lesson I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. These days, life feels different. It's not just the success of Green Grace, though that's a big part of it. It's the peace I've found in knowing I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. The chaos of the past year has settled into something quieter, something calmer. And for the first time in a long time, I feel free. My days are filled with the kind of work that doesn't feel like work. I spend my mornings reviewing customer feedback and brainstorming new products. Afternoons are for connecting with suppliers or meeting with potential collaborators. And in the evenings, I'll often sit down with a cup of tea and handwrite thank you notes for customers, a small touch that has become a signature of Green Grace. It's not always easy, of course. Running a business comes with its own set of challenges. Tight deadlines, occasional mistakes, and the ever-present pressure to innovate. But even on the hardest days, I feel a deep sense of gratitude for everything I've built. As for Emma, she's not on my mind as much anymore. It's not that I've forgotten what happened. I don't think I ever could. But the sharp sting of betrayal has dulled over time. I've reached a point where I can think about her without feeling angry or hurt. I haven't heard from her in months. The last update I got came from my mom, who mentioned in passing that Emma was figuring things out after closing her business. I didn't press for details, and my mom didn't offer any. Part of me wonders if she regrets how everything unfolded. Does she look back on her actions and see them for what they were? Does she miss the closeness we once had? I don't know. And honestly, I'm not sure I want to know. What I do know is that I don't hold a grudge. Carrying around that kind of weight doesn't serve anyone. Not me, not her, not the people I care about. Letting go has been a slow process, but it's been worth it. That doesn't mean I'm rushing to rebuild our relationship. Some bridges take time to mend, and others might never be repaired at all. For now, I'm okay with the distance between us. It's not about punishing her or making a point. It's about protecting myself. Trust, once broken, isn't easily restored. And while I'd like to think that Emma and I could find our way back to each other someday, it would take more than an apology. It would take accountability, understanding, and a willingness to truly make amends. Until then, I'm focused on the people who do support me, the friends, family, and customers who have stood by me through every step of this journey. Their encouragement has been a constant reminder that I'm not alone, even when things get tough. In a strange way, I owe Emma a debt of gratitude. If she hadn't stolen my idea, I might never have found the motivation to turn Green Grace into what it is today. Her betrayal lit a fire in me, pushing me to work harder, dream bigger, and believe in myself in ways I never had before. It's funny how life works out sometimes. What felt like the worst thing that could happen ended up being the catalyst for something incredible. And while I wouldn't wish that kind of pain on anyone, I can't deny that it taught me some valuable lessons about resilience, determination, and the importance of staying true to your vision. Looking ahead, I'm excited for what the future holds. Green Grace is more than just a business. It's a reflection of who I am and what I stand for. And as long as I'm following that path, I know I'll be okay. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that setbacks don't have to define you. They can shape you, challenge you, and even strengthen you, but they don't get to determine your worth. That's something only you can do. So here I am, moving forward. Not bitter, not broken, just proud of how far I've come and ready for whatever comes next. And if Emma ever decides she wants to have a real conversation, I'll be here. But until then, I'll keep building, creating, and living the life I've worked so hard to make. Funny how things work out, isn't it?